All right, guys. So today, what I have for you is I'm going to be doing an interview with the owner of the Golden Coalition, which is a esports organization. Would you describe it as that?
Yeah, I guess
Yes.
for lack
Yeah.
of a better term, yeah.
Yeah. So my first question really was going to be, what is TGC or the Golden Coalition? How would you describe it?
So we treat it like any sports organization as best as we can, right? But it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have the same kind of financial implications that I feel like that term would usually bring.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely become more of like a, and then I'm going to try to sound fancy here too. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
conglomerate would be more fitting, you know? I guess whoever
I think
watches
that
this,
is.
you can look up the definition and let me know if I'm just speaking outside of my vernacular there. But it's become more of just like a highly respected group of either very skilled players or personalities that basically just mutually benefit off of being in the same circle and trying to
Mm-hmm.
upkeep that environment for as long as we can.
Mm-hmm. I think I read a book a while ago, and I think the best way to describe it would be like a mastermind group. Is that like
Yeah,
yeah,
I
crazy?
would
I
like
think
that.
that's like the actual like definition of that, which is really cool. And that kind of goes into the next thing, is you said that it's not really like none of the players are really achieving anything monetarily, but you
Yeah.
have some of the most skilled players within the NRS scene. I'm not sure if you're aware, but I've been working on making like a list of like essentially the top 100 players, like a ranking,
Oh no, I've
and
noticed. Yeah, I've been waiting for it to come out.
yeah, and I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything, and obviously there's still more tournaments and stuff like that, but there are a decent amount of TGC players on that list. I mean, just from ECT alone, I think you guys had like 3 players in top 24,
Yeah.
which is actually like people might say that's not, oh, how many do you have in top 8, but like just like even like just making out of pools and then like top 24 is
Mhm.
insane. So you said that it's like a group of people who mutually benefit off each other. Do you want to go more like into a deep dive of that? Is it just like they get games
Yeah.
with each other? I know like you have, for example, Omnis is like a coach. Do you guys have like
Yes.
practice sessions, or is it not like that like serious essentially? No way.
So there's a couple of different kind of like roles that everybody fills, and essentially everybody to some effect is expected to carry their own weight as far as like benefiting the group, right? Like as you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, we have as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I will sometimes act as a coach. I do a lot better of a job of that than I do, competing myself. You'll have the difference with like influencers where I kind of fall into that group too with
Mm-hmm.
like Meeseeks or Marcelin, who was one of our more recent pickups where we're more focused on like expanding the brand and making sure people know that we exist and
Mm-hmm.
getting that word out there. The lack of like a monetary incentive is still something that I'm working, especially after like ECT when we get placements like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to use that as fodder to facilitate conversations that help us get something.
Yeah.
But for all of the competitors, I think one of the big things with them is they get to stay in an environment where they get to consistently play with, as you mentioned, but I like to think it in my head. I don't like to speak for other people, but as far as I'm considered, some of the best players we have in the scene right now, and a fair amount of them, and with a giant mix of characters. The
Mm-hmm.
only other group I think I could kind of point towards having anything reminiscent of it is the goons, where the goons
Mm-hmm. Oh
constantly have
yeah.
that environment of always practicing with the best.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of overlap between like goons and TGC. Like some TGC guys are goons and whatnot,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
staying within that circle and that iron sharpens iron mentality of
Mm-hmm.
always having, if you run into any problem, somebody on the team knows how to solve it. It is not a problem by tomorrow. That's a hard environment to find a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of our lore to other players is kind of like that entryway into that group, right? If you're hanging like right under that skill gap and you can't close it,
Mm-hmm.
if you can go through the application process and get in, you now get to kind of like, pick the brains of everybody that has that gap over you and then
Mm-hmm.
start whittling closer to becoming one of those players.
Yeah, that's really really cool, and I think a very unique thing within the community.
Mhm.
So that's kudos to you for being able to create that. So was that the original intention of TGC, or did it kind of just happen? Because I remember when I first got in, you
Mhm.
had a couple players here and there. I remember like Cease and Wu, for example, are two players that
Yeah.
stick out that have been there since like I feel like the beginning.
Mhm.
Were you guys just like friends of that thing, or did you like how did essentially you get it started?
Well, that's so obviously the idea was to get it to kind of where it is now as far as like our
Mm-hmm.
competitive skill level. I think it's kind of like us, STG, depending on the roster at the time that you ask, and TLR. I think is like another one that's starting to come up a
Mm-hmm.
lot when you start looking at like the members of their
Yeah, I
group.
probably said like you three
I
too.
wanted to create a group with that skill level, but that's the benefit of having like that bit of influence in the beginning, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
players that we were able to ascertain, like that outreach kind of grew as I grew a following and as like Cease grew as a competitor,
Mm-hmm.
where we had more of like a reason to try to tell people there was a benefit to coming in, right? Because it's like, look at the people that are in here, and it turns into that kind of like who you know networking thing. Like you look who's on the team and the consistency of the level of the people that are on the team, and it gives it more credibility in a way that I don't think we would have been able to do in the beginning. Wu, I was just lucky that he found me so entertaining when we started, because I needed somebody like it. Like to think that Wu, as respectfully as I could say it to Wu, isn't like our top 10 now, where before he was like our best guy. Like it was him and Cease, and that was our whole team, you know, along with a couple of others. I don't want to disrespect those who were there earlier.
But those two were like, anymore. Were like, but, at least the elite ones that I can.
But at least as far as like who's still active, you know, and Cease has managed to keep up. But it's like it's if you want to be like top 5 players on the team right now, the competition is so.
Yeah, absolutely. Like whether you have like Turkey, Blue Linkies, Cease. I don't know. Are those even like in the top 5 of your team right now? I mean,
ECT helps as far as like who was able to make it to that. I mean, Striker took Taku over Punk.
True. Striker. Yeah, Striker on your team too. Yeah, that's crazy.
Joystick was not that far behind, you know, and then even somebody like Kairos, who I think in 11 wasn't having as strong of a run, was still able to go Baraka Cyrax and get a couple of tips from the guys and have like a pretty solid placement, all things considered. And he's taken he's won some Xbox tournaments. He's starting to come up a little bit, you know. It's a hard thing to upkeep, but I'm happy we've got the group that's able to do it.
I know like Big Bird also did pretty good at ECT. I know he got like second at NEC too. So you guys have like, it seems like whenever, even like at offlines, you see a tournament and you have TCC players in like top 8 or top 24 for bigger tournaments and stuff like that. So that's really cool. So if someone were, for example, wanted to join TGC, you said there was an application process, or you said do you just have like, we're having tryouts, do you want to come try out? Or because you have content creators, like you said, you have people like Miss V6 who's a like more of a commentator, content creator type. So essentially, is there a process? Do you just apply? Do they just reach out to you, or essentially how does that work?
It depends what you want to be on the team for, right? Like clearly the toughest one would be a competitor, because the more competitors we get, I'm still actually working on an announcement for another group of them soon. I haven't been able to Photoshop it yet, but as you know, or getting somebody like Cosner, you know, like in the history that he has, like if you want to join the team, that's kind of like the more people we get, the higher the bar gets set. As far as it was definitely easier to get on the team years ago than it is now, you know, 100%. As far as how much we really need, or the amount of people that I'm willing to manage all day. Commentators, content creators, those like that's more of just a conversation of how can you benefit either the team with your branding or just me with help. Like I have staff members on the team. We run events, you know, you do SRTV, you know the headache it is to try to run events weekly and not have the extra hands. And so there's the easiest way to get on is just tell me, Kevin, I'll help you run brackets anytime you need me. And if I go through your Twitter and you're not insane, I'll most likely take you, you know. But the competitor process has been, we worked out a formula years ago, even when we were like still 7 members deep, where you reach out to us or we schedule a date that people could come in and do open tryouts. We put them through 3 first to 3s, and then we have a secret metric that we use to judge them behind the scenes. That's the one part of it we don't share. So we'll tell everybody, and we mean it when we say this, that winning or losing doesn't necessarily, like, I'm not looking just to see you win all the time. I get if I give you Sully, Turkey, and Cease, that's going to be a rough night for a tryout, you know? I'm not expecting you to beat all of them in a set, but
or even one of them.
There are some fundamental things that we're looking for, right? That can be a showcase of potential that you might have. And we use our little system to kind of monitor that behind the scenes. So it's essentially, we put them through that process. If we like them, based on our system, we take them. If we don't like them, it's a no. If we're not sure, there's like a phase 2 where the biggest difference is it's similar to the first one, except we take what we believe your problem was in your first tryout and try to set up an environment where it exposes it in the second one. So if you have this doesn't have anything to do with the metrics, but if I think you have a problem with whiff punishing, I will give you somebody on the team that is the best at doing that. If I think you're too impatient to chase somebody, you now have to play Dark Elite, who's never going to let you get, you know. Exactly. If I think, let's say, like you can't maintain composure, somebody like Bird, whose whole goal will be to upset you the whole set and see if you can, like, you know,
keep it together. And
we'll work it out in phase 2, and then that's when we get the definitive after that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to go about it, because like I've tried out for teams and stuff like that, and I don't know really the metrics behind it. Like I'm not an event owner. Well, I own a Survivor TV, but we don't like have like competitive players. So that's really cool to see the metric that goes behind it and how you would consider having a player join your organization.
Yeah.
So in terms of like, so is there any like, does TGC really have any like sponsorships? Are you guys working with anyone, or is it just TGC and all your events and stuff like that is just TGC?
So it's mostly just our branding. Now there's one or two situations that I'm looking into right now, right? Because obviously monetary incentive is great whenever you can provide it, and it's a hard thing to get. I've finessed things over the years, right? Like I've done sponsorships and then managed to kind of like sprinkle out some of that sponsorship money, but it's not as solid as having an official sponsor rather than just booting up Stream Elements and seeing what I could potentially do that week.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's a couple of conversations that I've started, but it's difficult, right? Because they're a hard resource to find. You have to hear a lot of no's. Sometimes you right now I'm in the middle of a conversation that I'm trying to push forward, but it's a very particular setup and it's hard to manage, and I have to see how much I can really even offer what it is that they want. Well, I mean, one of the best things I have right now is like if you stick your logo on our jersey, there's a big chance somebody's going to see it. You know, we have the outreach and the marketing to really get eyes on your product, but I just need to, I'm trying to figure out a better way to kind of like sell that point to sponsors that may be interested. And with how niche competitive gaming is, and the least how niche it is with fighting games, and how much smaller of a bubble it is with MK, and how violent the game is, it's a bit of a harder sell, but we're working on it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a bit of a big hard sell, like honestly. Like the state of esports is definitely, I mean, right now, I'm not sure if there's been any sort of resurgence, but it seems like it's almost on a downtrend, which is opposite to what I was thinking. Because I like, when I first, got into this, I started competing in Super Smash Bros. Melee 2016. I was like, this is going to be such a huge thing. Like, things are streaming. Right yeah, Smash especially. I don't even know if I want to talk about that. But it's just interesting to see. Do you, I mean, I guess this is more of a general question, but do you think there's anything that we could do as like a conglomerate with the FGC or just esports in general? Is there something that you feel like we're missing, or something that you feel like the community can do to kind of get to the next level and maybe get sponsorship eyes and start getting, organizations money, and then just turn players and content creators get money? Do you have any ideas about that?
I think the best chance that we have, right? Because the biggest thing you sell in any kind of market like that, especially when it comes to like gaming, is all influence, right? Having competitors is good for giving the fans of our hobby something to watch, right? And we bring them in and give them no entertainment. We don't have anything to sell. But for companies, like getting eyes on an event is only part of it. Like we really need to be able to build an influence to get that base, to be able to kind of, as far as it sounds mean, but it's what selling influence is, right? Getting them to do whatever it is that we say solely because they like us. And a lot of the scene is more focused on like their competitive ego, the pride they get from the community, right? The dopamine rush of like winning a tournament and then telling everybody else to F off. I'm
the shit.
We have influencers in the scene, but I've been discussing this with them too. I try to when I can. It's hard because there is kind of like a bit of a lack of collaboration that I feel. If we all grew in the scene as like a group of influencers that were constantly bouncing off of one each other, so we were circulating the same fan base, we'd have a way better chance of not only the selfish benefits of our own monetary gain, but being able to grow that base quicker. Because if you have, if you're a fan of one streamer and you become a fan of 10, eventually your friend has 10 people to watch. That's more outreach. It's more, more YouTube outreach, right? A lot of us are just like stuck on Twitch streaming. Not everybody has the time, which I get it. We all work, but it's all about expanding that influence to a level where we can reach out to another player base, right? We're not as big as Call of Duty players. Their reach is insane. So when a sponsor is looking for, all right, I want to sell Mountain Dew through somebody, it's way easier to do that through like a Fortnite player who's ascertained that audience with all of his friends, rather than an MK player where you're considered basically like a very successful streamer in the community at sometimes if you can hold 50 viewers consistently with us,
Yeah, no, 100%. So, no, I definitely agree. And I think I can definitely agree to that. There's a little bit of, and I don't want to like call anyone out or say like anything negative about the scene, but a bit of like people want to be the person, essentially, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
like they want their brand, like they do a lot of things themselves, and that's something that we that I've noticed and wanted to get away from Survivor TV, is that we have like a team. We have like 5 or 6 people that are kind of willing to work towards a common goal. And I think that actually a really good point is that if we can get more of the community, instead of being like, I want to try to be successful for myself, be like, how can I essentially make that community better in a way? I think it's a
Yeah.
little bit of the way you were going at it, in a way that we can kind of be like, hey, look at all this attention that the community gets, instead of like, look at all this attention that I get. So I think that's actually
Yeah.
a really good idea. Cause
And
then,
it's hard too because I understand
mm,
like that there's a bit of selfishness that's necessary, right?
mm, there
Like you
is.
guys have SRTV, I have my Golden Fight League events.
Mm,
We need teams to help run them, but we also do need to be selfish, right? Like I should want my stream to be better than yours. You should want your stream to be better than mine
100%.
because that competition, it's kind of like I'm a wrestling fan, so it's the same kind of like WWE, AEW right now,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
Like it's everybody benefits and everybody gets better content if we're still trying to compete with each other.
Hmm.
But I think it's hard to kind of sell competing with each other with the goal that like secretly we're also working together. You know?
Yeah. No, and that's a fine line that like I feel like sometimes I personally struggle with, because I not only do I run the events, but I compete a lot as well.
Mhm.
And it's like wanting to be happy for other people, whether it's their stream or tournament results, while also wanting to beat them and wanting to be better than them. And I think that's a hard struggle, because like fighting games particularly, they are a very individualistic thing. Like
Yes.
whether you do good or bad is solely pretty much on you. I mean, I don't think that actually there's any other factors really besides yourself. Um, so yeah, it makes it really, and then that also makes it very like ego crushing and stuff like that. So you don't have to point out any particular like players or anything, but going off that, have you ever had an instance where maybe a player wasn't a good fit for TGC and you essentially had to kick them off, or maybe even they went like overboard and you're like, all right, like you had to be the man, like, because it seems like such a family environment, such like a friends like that, like you had to kind of be like, okay, I'm the boss man here, and you don't need to point to a person, but you can give like maybe an example.
Oh no,
If you
for
had to do
sure.
that,
I mean, I'm
yeah.
not, you know, I'm a gossiper, but any of the gossip I'm public with, I've usually said like publicly already.
Yeah.
Almost for every category that we've had, as far as like competitor, content creator, influencer, or something, you know, there's been somebody that either was not a good fit during the process or was not a good fit afterwards, or you end up finding out things, right? Like we try harder now. It's way more of a key point for me now to go through like a social media background check, which I'll say sometimes, being
Doesn't
honest,
work,
like
yeah.
sometimes the team does not like how long I take with that, but I'm trying to find everything. If they have an Instagram, if they have a this, if they have a that, if I can find them on LinkedIn, whatever info I can, because you never know, right? We've had members before that we've had for a while, and then went through situations just because I could have been a little more diligent in my research. And for the sake of being lazy, I was like, all right, I've seen enough. They're fine. Whatever brought them on, you know. Sometimes we have members who like try out and I go to check their socials and they have them, but there's like nothing on there. That's suspicious. I have to investigate that, you know. And then there's just people that like, sadly, have had their own issues where it's just like where I won't start pointing fingers and getting into their business, but where they just had their own like personal qualms that started coming out the second they had to deal with the pressure of being a little patient or waiting for something, or you know, not everybody does a good job of listening to people. Like I have matured over the years with it, but one of the reasons that I run the events and that I have the team is I'm also a control person, and I like knowing that I have control over my environment. So having an event where I get to control how it goes and having a team where I get to control how it functions makes me feel a lot safer at the end of the day. So I'm not judging people who have that personality type, but it's not always the most conducive to a friendly environment if they don't want to listen to anybody.
Yeah. No,
and
100%.
When we run into situations like that, unfortunately, because I'm the control guy, I'm also now the guy that has to have the rough conversation with everyone when it comes time, which is fun. But like, you know, the past couple of years I've gotten better at doing it. It's more of just like an errand that I run now compared to like years ago. I would be stressing it all day. Like, I have to talk to this person. I don't want to, you know.
Yeah.
Now it's like I feel unfortunate, but you just do it. You have to.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely the same way, where if I have to deliver bad news or anything like that, that's something that weighs on me all day. I'm just like, how am I going to approach this? How are they going to react? I mean, like, they're still my friends, so like, or whatever the situation may be. And the reason I ask that is because SRTV, we haven't really had to do anything like that. Fortunately, we're not like a huge team organization, but like every time we've gotten someone on, they have been better than our expectations could have have been. So it's been awesome. But with an organization as big as yours, I can only imagine that something like that would happen. So you're saying that you are now more selective about the players that you had when before it was, you know, more loose. Is there like a certain amount of players that you are like capping out on? Like, we have a 20-person roster or 30-person roster or something like that, or is it just like, if you're good enough, we'll add you, you know, if you try out or whatever?
It's kind of like I've flirted with the idea because there's the main reason that we have to be more selective now, right, is that there's kind of like before it was just focusing on the branding and the marketing and making sure like coming up with a name like Golden Coalition, which would have a nice ring to it. Like that was the focus in the beginning. What is our logo? How do we come off? What's the branding here? Is this appealing? We've gotten past that point now where there's like our Twitter has like 300 followers or something on it. I'm still that also falls under me having to upkeep that, which is why a lot of times you'll see like big gaps in the content there. But I think it definitely has more outreach than the number would imply when you start asking people in the scene if they know about the team. So we've covered that base. Now it's more of there's a certain level to upkeep competitively, right? I like the idea of capping it at a certain point, but it's unrealistic as far as, again, like expanding that outreach, because any player we can get that's like ridiculous, right? Like it would have been insane to deny somebody like Luddy an opportunity to be on the team solely because we have 29 people and Cosner was the 30th and you're too many now, you know?
No, 100%.
So the reason it's stressful is because it's also like the bigger the team gets, it's the more people you have to manage, it's the more opportunities for, you know, dramatics like the stuff that you mentioned before. Like clearly everybody has a competitive ego, right? And so a lot of that managing isn't necessarily even watching them all day. The idea is that if they're good on social media, I don't have to do that. But it's kind of just like it's going to sound mean. They've got the ego to hear it. Taking a room full of babies and trying to make sure that they share the toys, you know?
100%.
You bring somebody new and you bring in a new ego, then we have to be careful monitoring that. And it'll fall on like me, Cease, Ominous, but like you know, you whittle it down to its core, it always ends up falling on me at some point. But if we get like how many top 8 placements has Luddy got in like the past 4 days almost, it feels like, you know, he places in everything. There's no skill there's no I was gonna say skill cap, there's no participant limit that's going to stop me from bringing him on the team. That'd be a ridiculous decision on my end, you know?
Even like top 8 at Combo Breaker too, like he's been going, he went to we had a regional tournament up in Syracuse and he won that. So like he's an insanely strong player, and definitely cool that you were able to add him on, as well as like Cosner and Fluidity were your most recent additions. And that's what's kind of like, I saw how like stacked your team was, and then you just got like more, and it was just like, it's so cool that you're able to provide like an environment that these really strong players want to join. It's not even necessarily like you're like reaching out like, hey, do you want to join? It's more of like they decided like, I really want to be a part of this. So that's really cool that you're able to create that from essentially just like a brand name, which is super cool. So you talked about you had the brand name, the Golden Coalition. Do you want to go into like a little bit why that's the name?
So it's an FGC group that was built originally off of like my influence at the time. Because it was the only appeal we had to like get players when you're starting a group that technically has no players on it, right? So we had some strong ones in the beginning, but they were essentially like my friends, and thankfully I was friends with players who were relatively strong. Like he's not on the team anymore, but like Mygo consistently places very high in Blaze Blue, places high in Mortal Kombat, has like won majors multiple times over his life.
There's a strong Guilty Gear player too, if I'm not mistaken.
He plays every. You know, I'm more in that camp too, where like I play a little bit of everything. Like obviously focus MK, but I play Street Fighter. I'm actually still trying to squeak in time to play more Dalton because I just find them so fun. But I was lucky enough to have that little bit of a base, but that base also came from my influence too, right? It's like I streamed enough and built up enough of a rapport with some of these gamers to like get Wu and Cease and Mygo, and that's like a strong start in the beginning, and Juan and Fresh who we had. And then be able to constantly, you know, it's kind of like a brass rings kind of scenario that we're always trying to pull, right? You get one player that's a little, or Cease gets a little better, that lets us get somebody else that puts us a level up. And where we're at now is basically the result of years and years and years of doing that. From like where I think it started like 2021, I believe. And now we're like coming up on 2024 soon, you know, 3 to 4 years of constantly trying to elevate it little by little gets us to the point now where you make a list of the top 100 players in the scene, and a fair amount of my guys are on there. You know, it's really just cool. that consistency that you try to chase.
Yeah, absolutely. So I and like that's kind of like what I've tried to do a little bit, like with like the playing and stuff like that. Is I have like a Strawberry TV shirt, for example. So like I go to these tournaments and I get on stream or whatever, and then I have like the shirt on, or like. There was a regional tournament like Upstate Uproar that just posted where like they took like a picture, they did like a recording of like giving the top 3 people like their medals and the trophies and stuff like that. And I had this SRTV shirt on, so it like kind of like helps people be like, oh, okay, well, like what's that, stuff like that. So I guess this is gonna be a little bit more of a personal question, but you're a player. You play not only MK but Street Fighter. You are also a content creator personally. You have your KevinMcolon like Twitch channel and stuff like that. How do you have like a planner? Like, do you schedule out your days, or is it kind of just like I have XYZ thing to do today, or if you're just like I'm gonna give it my best shot and whatever gets done, and whatever doesn't?
Time management, unfortunately, is probably one of my worst skills, and this is like a career choice when you're trying to become a content person or an influencer or what have you, where it's probably the one that you need the most, and I'm horrible at it. Like if you knew me personally and how bad I am at scheduling and managing time and remembering things and whatnot, the fact that I've managed to garner an audience at all is like a testament to just like, again, like consistency and chasing after it, and a willingness to take criticism, as much as I don't like patting myself on the back, because I have afternoons that are rough when I have to hold a critique that I don't like the sound of, but it's similar to competitors trying to constantly get a little better every day. That as like a personality, you're trying to do the same, right? How can I make the stream a little bit more entertaining? How can I make something look a little nicer? And like even trying to just support yourself financially, it's Twitch monetization, YouTube ad revenue, which I'm still working on getting back because there was a bit where I wasn't doing it. I do graphic design commissions, so I'm like managing a commission schedule all day. I'm actually working on one for Dynasty right now that I just sent them like I think 2 seconds ago.
Nice. Okay, that's what you're working on before us?
Okay. Yeah. It's where I'm like freaking out about it. I have to like work this thing in there. All of that, because you're essentially creating like 8 different revenue streams and then trying to manage them all day. And I definitely, like, if my wife wasn't so successful in her real life job, which is way more important to the world, that she's in education, so she's doing so much more for the world than I am. But I'm just
in your room with the shades down, playing some video games.
If I had her managing my schedule, it'd be so much easier. Like anything we do in life, like we're if we're trying to have a baby, if she does not manage that schedule, we don't have one. So it's hard. I think the biggest thing that pushes me behind it is, and I mentioned this in a video like a while ago. When I started doing the content thing and I made like the mental decision that I was going to stay dedicated to it, mentally I was in a really bad place at the time. And going, okay, I'm just going to pursue my passion because what else is there to do if I'm this upset? Put me in a way better place. And now I like, the best man at my wedding was somebody that I met through pursuing my hobby in fighting games,
That's cool.
And so I always like the idea of trying to, and it's why I want the scene to grow and why I want to like compete but share influence and all of this stuff, is that I want to showcase to other people that it might be as beneficial to, that it's there, that it exists, and that it's something you can do, and that the majority of us are nice, which online is really it's a hard point to prove.
It is 100%.
There's a couple of personalities, I'll name them if you want me to name them later, but that make it more difficult to try to like make that sell. So it's hard for me to manage all of this stuff. That's my motivation to do it. And I'm just trying to, like everything else, get better at it every day.
Yeah, that's something that like there's times where like, okay, I'm going to make a schedule and stuff like that. I'm going to write everything down. And it's hard to even do that, because then that's another thing you have to do. It's like you have to make time to plan your schedule and stuff like that. And it's definitely led to some, I don't want to say like sticky situations, but like I enter a lot of events. I play in events pretty much every day. Plus I run my own and stuff like that. And there's times where I just forget and I don't show up. And like some people take that harder than others. Some people like, oh, I understand. Like people aren't going to show up. And then there's some that are like, will like at you on like a Twitter post and be like, you didn't show up. What the hell? And I'll be like, oh, like I just forgot, honestly. Like, so, and so in a way, and obviously the FGC isn't a huge thing. So in a way, it could be a little bit like of a thankless job or unrewarding. Is there anything that like kind of keeps you motivated? Is it like a vision that you have? Is it because now you have this team and you have people that like that this in a way like depend on you a little bit? Like what keeps you going? What keeps TGC going?
I enjoy the challenge that content presents because I have a skill set that's catered to it. If I didn't think that I did in the beginning, I wouldn't have done it, right? Like I've had a litany of hobbies over my life. I was, I was on the wrestling team in high school. I did MMA for a bit. I I was into music. I still play and sing and do all of the fun stuff. But I you know, like, I'm not the worst player in fighting games. I'm not the best, but I've had an ability to like showcase skills days where I'm dialed in. I have a graphic design background. I thankfully years ago finally got my associate's degree, so I at least have it on a piece of paper that I know how to do it.
Nice.
I've messed with audio engineering and production and video editing. You know, when I was a kid and doing YouTube videos, I thought I was going to be a game grump, basically.
I'm gonna be so big.
Let's plays with my friends all day. So I kind of built up this combination of skills over the years that like best suit themselves towards this. And then picked up new skills with this, right? Like understanding algorithms, learning how to like farm engagement, doing all of the statistics, search engine optimization, all of this, which I've enjoyed learning. And I'm very particular as a person where I cannot pursue something that I am not interested in. You can't get me out of bed if I'm not in the mood to do it, you know? When I get up in the morning and I think about all my stuff that I have to do during the day, I get excited to get in this chair and continue to work on it. And if it wasn't for that, I would not be known to anybody at all. I would play MK as a casual, and I'd probably be playing like Horizon Zero Dawn right now or something. You know? But it's that motivation of, like I mentioned before, wanting to show everybody that this exists because it might help them the way that it helped me and give them a sense of community. And then also the fact that I just love it so much. Like without those two, I wouldn't be able to do it every day.
Yeah. I feel like in a way, like our beginning or origin story, I guess, in the FGC is a little similar in a way. It was kind of like, you know, at least for me, I was having a bit of a hard time, and it felt like I almost didn't have like control over my life. I was going to school, I was, you know, going to my classes, I was like hanging out with people and stuff like that, and it just felt like I was just kind of drifting, if that made sense.
Yeah, no,
and then,
same.
Yeah, and in a way, not to say that like it was just like the FGC or playing fighting games, but it gave me something that like, oh, like I'm excited for. Like I'm excited to go to this tournament, or I'm excited to, and then when I start TMing, I'm excited to run this event, or how am I going to do that? And now that I'm like, I just recently started like this YouTube channel, and now I'm thinking like, oh, what content can I create? What can I do? Like, how can I highlight certain things? And at least for my personal like mission, I guess, if you know, we're gonna put it into words, is to essentially try to like grow the FGC or list video games in general. Because as you said, like your story and my story, like beget origin stories are similar, and we could potentially influence someone, as you pretty much pointed out earlier, to that like, hey, like you know, there's something here. It's more than just you know getting on and pressing some buttons. And so there definitely is like a stigma in the fighting game community, or just the FGC, not the FGC, video games in general. Do you have any, like, maybe if it's a story or just a personal take of like why essentially that negative stigma is wrong in a way?
What would you say that the stigma is, just so I make sure?
It's essentially like like video games are kind of like a waste of time. Like for example, and not to call anyone out, but I'm obviously very busy with this stuff, so like me and my girlfriend will go and visit her family sometimes in Long Island, and I have to take my stuff with me. I'll bring my computer or my PlayStation, and I'll just set up like a little shop like in one of the rooms and stuff like that. And they're like, "What is he doing? Why is he doing that?" They're constantly asking me questions about it, like what's going on here. And it's kind of like, I guess it's like hard to like get through to them, like, hey, like I'm doing this thing and we're running events, and you know, I'm like it's like a brand thing and stuff like that. I'm like a event organizer in a way. Like, does that make sense?
No, I just wanted to make sure that I was on the under the right umbrella of conversation.
Yeah.
So it's hard because I'm sure you have too, right? Like that, our stories of why we got into the scene are very reminiscent of the majority of the people I talk to and why they got into the scene and what it's done for them. Content is not an easy sell until you're somebody like Ninja that has that level of recognition. Like, and you know, talking about Fortnite Ninja, just because we're in an MK community, I don't want to because even our Ninja Killer, our Ninja Killer has like a decent amount of success, and even he, I think, is at a level where people still argue, what is he doing? People don't really have an understanding of how you monetize something like this, which I think is the harder part, right? Especially where you have to explain to somebody with something like Twitch, like, oh, I'm just hoping that people give me dollars. Like, you come off as like an e-beggar in some situations, right? Like, I'm trying to provide entertainment, and I'm hoping somebody feels like giving me
money,
$5, which is essentially $2.50. You know? So communicating, I've been in separate phases of my life. When I was younger and trying to do this, my family was not as supportive as like
Mhm.
my step family. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the term for like, my wife's family
Yeah, yeah.
has been incredibly supportive, and
That's
it's
awesome.
polarizing, like where I've been then to where I am now. The reason
Mhm.
that I have a schedule
Mhm.
where I can do this is because of the support I get from them to try to pursue it. I
Mhm.
mean, obviously there's a bit of realism to it, right? I
Yeah.
can't do it forever and then also buy a house if it's not getting
Yeah.
profitable. But
Yeah. 100%.
um most people outside of our bubble don't even have an understanding of how it works.
Mhm.
So you're legitimately telling them, okay, I'm just trying to make money playing video games. That doesn't sound realistic. Like the
Yeah.
best version they have of doing that is you work at a GameStop and hopefully you can manage a store. And then
Yeah.
there you're doing stuff with video games and making money,
Exactly,
which I
exactly.
almost did in the past.
Yeah.
Not chasing your passions, I think, in the least for a lot of people, even if because we can't all make it as much as I'd love if we could,
Yeah.
right? There,
Yeah,
there is
100%. A limit to the amount
like
of people
I'm
that can
not
make.
even considered a micro influencer where I'm at. Like
Yeah.
somebody like Stacy is. I'm not even
Yeah.
like I'm building a following and I'm not even there.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I'm listening. Like if you check statistics, like the top 3%, the top like 1.5% of
Mhm.
like streamers, if you look it up, it works out that way because that's how many
Mhm.
people are trying to do it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think necessarily it's realistic for everybody because some people like that like have a hard time taking criticism. There's some
Mhm.
like character flaws that prevent you from being successful with this, but
Mhm.
I do think if you are like anything else, right? If you want to be an actor or a singer, there's a lot of jobs out there that are unrealistic, but there are people that are doing them,
Yeah.
right? You have to try, and I think to deny
No.
yourself at least the opportunity to pursue it
Mhm.
with everything that you have, because if you don't pursue it with your full being when you don't have the opportunity to do it anymore, you're going to beat yourself over the head of everything that you could have tried to do that you
Yeah,
didn't do,
exactly. 100%.
which is hard to manage with burnout also. But it's
Mhm.
I think in the least, like especially having been in both environments without it being supported and with it being supported,
Mhm.
if you've checked my following lately, it's grown a lot lately.
Mhm.
And I'm talking about like very expediently in like the past like 3 months. That's all of
Mhm.
the because of the support system I have now.
Mhm.
I did it for years before having that system and could not make progress at all. It's very detrimental to not have, you know, at least somebody in your corner. And I wish more people got it.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing with like the stigma of people thinking it's a waste of time is just understanding that there's a lot of things your kid could want to do,
Mhm.
and I think you could let them do it for a bit. Now, if they get out of line, if it starts getting a little ridiculous, there's a point
Mhm.
as a parent where I understand you got to reel them back in. We have bills to pay,
Yeah.
but there's the resentment that'll get built up. I think if they're really really about it, for lack of a better term, and
Mhm.
they're not allowed to go after it, it's hard.
Yeah. 100%. And because I feel like something that I like recently thought of is that like when we're growing up, we're raised on this idea that we can be whatever we want when we grow up. You could be a baseball
Mhm.
player, you could be the president, you could be, XYZ thing. And then as you get older and you reach like the college age, 18, 19, 20, now it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do for a job? You're going to become an accountant. Where are you going to college? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
What are you going to major in? And stuff like that. And the conversation like can kind of completely flips. And I think we lose that kind of like I would say like passion in a way. Not to say that like
Mhm.
we do, but like and it's kind of feel like something that got me when I was like first going to college was like, okay, I was kind of like I played sports a lot in high school. And
Mhm.
I was pretty good. Like I wasn't like great, I wasn't fantastic, I wasn't getting scholarships, but I was also like good enough to be like a starter on the team and stuff like that. And like when I was like maybe like 12, 13, as I was growing up, like oh I'm gonna be a professional athlete in some way. And then as I got older, I realized that it was going to be more and more unrealistic. And it was kind of like, well, how do I find that like same passion and enjoyment while also pursuing a career and stuff like that. And like I have my job, I work my 9 to 5, but then I also have this, and I feel like that's kind of like a little like the best of the both worlds. In a
Mhm.
situation where I have the 9 to 5 and I go do and I can pay my bills and say like, hey, like I'm doing this. So now when I go and do this, it's a little bit more like understandable instead of like being like this is all I do and I just stream 8 hours a day and
Yeah.
if people give me money, that's awesome. If they don't, then I'm broke. Um, so I think that's something that's at least like helped me justify it more to people, which I feel like I kind of hate that I have to do that.
Yeah, it's so
Uh,
I mean I do think it's an important aspect of it because if it's something that you want to do as a career, which is what I hear from a lot of people, right?
mhm,
Understanding how to make it profitable is a part of that,
mhm,
right? Like as fun as it would be to just sit down and compete in the game all day, at some point you have to turn. Like my wife was also a little skeptical in the beginning of it until I was able to show her at least some checks. You know?
Like,
they weren't the biggest checks in the world, but the fact that money was coming in for doing this, and for a lot of people who are younger and want to pursue it as a career, I think they just see what the influence brings, and they don't think about how you have to support yourself until you get there.
Yeah.
So when their parent comes up and they're like, okay, well, this is what you want to do. Like, how are you going to pay your bills? And they can't answer that question. You cut off the whole idea of it being realistic right there, because your answer is basically like, well, just let me get really good at the game, Dad, and then I'll get famous, Dad. And famous, I'll make money, Dad. And there is no plan. The more that I've done it, there's, the sponsorships and the ad revenue and the monetization and, even like the commission stuff, which is a way that I on the back end that isn't really like, it's kind of part of me as a content person because people know that I design my own stuff, but it's like a separate business on the side that I use the content to kind of like market. They're like, hey, I can make you these graphics for this fee and etc. I could, if you were to sit me down and go, okay, how do you specifically make money doing it? I have an answer for you. So when I have to pitch it to somebody else who's less understanding of how it's profitable, I can at least answer that question. If I wasn't able to do that, I don't know if the support system would be the same,
100%. And it's good that you're able to do that. And I feel like you said, like, a lot of these kids don't really know how to do that or even how to like monetize it in a way that like it could be at least something. And I feel like it's kind of good that, we're essentially doing this right now, is like you can kind of like teach it. So I guess going into that, is there like any tips you would have for someone who is essentially maybe either trying to make an org or just content, or essentially maybe if it is just how to justify it to other people so you can keep doing it?
So I think if I like TLDR'd like the basic structure, regardless of what you wanted to do, as long as it was like a gaming thing, it's all about ad revenue and discoverability. Those are the main two things you're trying to manage in the beginning. So just getting people to understand you exist and then doing it in a way that pays you. YouTube over Twitch, I think I would we've both been Twitch over YouTube people that are now moving over, and I'm very, very fortunate. This is why I say like this would be a hard hobby to pursue if I wasn't good at it, because that entertainment value that I spent a whole year on Twitch basically learning how to be funny without pissing people off, is the reason I was able to grow on Twitch. If I did not have that kind of like personality type, if I wasn't kind of like dialed into that humor part of it from trying to do Let's Plays on YouTube years before that, the discoverability on Twitch sucks, and it's very hard to get found on that website. 100%. I've seen so many people that just boot up and play Call of Duty for 8 hours and turn off and do that for 3 months and then go, I can't make it. YouTube has way better discoverability. It has a way, it's an easier to explain monetization program, right? Because it has its metrics that you have to hit. They're more realistic metrics to hit. Like, how many of us have followings in the community and only like 4% of us have Twitch partner, affiliate for 80% of the people we know is hard for them to hit, and that's 50 followers and 3 average viewers, and it's hard for people to maintain that. You follow YouTube's program, you get in there, you figure out the formula to make entertaining content, and then you can transfer that skill over to Twitch, which I think is better built to monetize the audience you currently have rather than try to grow one that you don't have yet, right? You can build them up on YouTube, and then somebody can start doing that and do their first ever debut stream on Twitch could floor me in numbers if they're bringing an entire audience over from somewhere else, And especially with everybody's attention span nowadays, you need to be everywhere. So if you can have a TikTok, if you can have a Twitter, if you can have a YouTube, which is why somebody like me with a horrible affinity for time management, it's hard because you have to manage all of those platforms, and I'm very bad at managing all of the platforms consistently. I've picked my 3, which is Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, right, to focus on, and then as they grow, the hope is that like you get successful enough where you can get a team that can kind of handle the rest and kind of expand that blanket. But I think you really just have to focus on what you're doing, be willing to take criticism, try to improve it every day. Be self-critical, because if you make the same video for the next 20 years, your audience isn't going to grow. And very much focus on what the plan is, because a lot of people I think make content with no plan. Like they're just like, I'm going to play ranked matches in Kombat League and upload, and that's not really a plan. That's just a thing. Like, that's filler, right? That's not you can do that consistently, but you're competing in a sea of 8 million people that are doing that. You need something that's either so entertaining that it stands out, or is something that I'm looking for anyway, so I'd watch it. You know?
And I feel like when it comes to like doing like that rank thing, you either need to be incredibly skilled, and that way like people are just impressed by your like gameplay. You have to be very just entertaining while you're doing it. So it's like whether you're talking or you have to be really good at video editing and being able to edit a video that's like really entertaining and constantly is keeping you engaged. Which I feel like any one of those three is very difficult. So
yeah, I think even though I don't watch him much, Mike Trelinsky's a good example of that as far as like keeping the content engaged. You go on his YouTube channel, it's like every 4 seconds something is happening, and he is just spewing out. The consistency is also hard because the videos are edited that well, and then also out like every 5 minutes. Yeah, it's very like he's a hard YouTuber to compete with if that's your goal, you know. But he's also a good benchmark as how you could take something as easy as ranked matches and make them entertaining, but it takes work.
Yep, it takes a lot of work. I think I've heard that he said it takes about 8 to 10 hours to edit all of his videos or something like that, around that. So it's like,
and then he's up streaming till 4 a.m. I don't know how he does, like he just doesn't sleep.
Yeah, no, like, and he's definitely someone who's extremely entertaining. It's definitely a big influence in the scene. Another person I would point to is Diff. Not sure if you watch him. He's definitely very good at creating a story and then playing well, good editing, and then just making everything kind of come together. Very engaging. Also, helps that he plays Scorpion, which is the figurehead. I think a lot of people watch Scorpion. Unfortunately, he's kind of boring to play, but I guess he's fun to watch.
I mean, Mike's playing him too, so we.
Yeah, that's funny, right? Maybe we just gotta play Scorpion. Maybe that's what we gotta do.
Oh, so we gotta talk to Skash, man.
Yeah, true. I mean,
he's slacking.
Yeah, he's not even playing Scorpion. He's playing Johnny this game.
Oh no, he wants to win. I respect it.
I respect it. Yeah, no, Johnny's insane. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you're a busy person.
No, I mean,
and stuff.
Yeah, if it's a segue, it's cool, but feel free.
Yeah, a little bit of a segue. I was gonna say, do you have any like closing notes? Anything that you want to say? Just whether it's personal, you want to just talk about your personal stuff, or if you have a message or anything like that. Maybe a question that you thought maybe I would ask that I didn't get to, like that.
Okay, if there's one main critique I have for the scene, because it's one of those like close to chest things I hold on to all the time. I don't spout about it because I don't like being dramatic on socials all day. But I really would try to push for a lot of people in our scene to be more welcoming, as far as like the casual audience, right? They're the hardest ones to reach out to because they feel very detached from what we're doing a lot of the time.
100%.
But to get the content that you want, to get the support that you want, to get that money in pro comp, right? All of that is fueled off of the casual audience and turning them into competitors and keeping them entertained, right? One of the reasons we're one of the 3 pillars is because we have that. I think between us, Street Fighter 6, Tekken, we have the biggest casual audience.
100%.
There's no reason we should be falling behind.
Yeah, we shouldn't, but we are.
we have a problem with like I've said this to people too, right? We'll have like invitational events for like just women. I'm not the biggest fan of those events existing, not because I don't think that you should have invitationals like that, but because they're a beacon to me of the fact that half of the reason those events exist is because those women are not willing to play in other events because of the type of personalities they have to deal with when they get there, or like the marginalized genders when they try to expand and they're basically gate kept by casual or more toxic personalities and told to get out. When this is not a hobby where it matters who's holding the controller. It's just all about, are you good at it when you do it? Do you care to improve?
Yeah. 100%.
And so they're a part of that bubble, albeit a smaller part, but just in general, like I don't like the idea of gatekeeping people at all.
No,
I want people to enjoy the game. I want them to grow. All of my content is outside of, again, trying to take money, is focused on trying to get people to understand that there's a positive community here that wants you to be in it. If you're one of those people and you feel like you're not allowed to be included because you're running into those personalities, I very much encourage you to just dig a little deeper and find those of us that are waiting for you to show up, because we'd be your best friend tomorrow if we just knew you were out there. So if you, for any reason, are discouraged from participating in this stuff because of people that you've dealt with, again, please try to push past them and get to the rest of us, because when you get knee deep in the community, especially like you've been at the offlines, it does not exist there.
No,
right? It's not there when we come out in person.
Not at all. Everyone's super nice, and even someone who you may have had a problem with online, you just got an offline, and you're like buddies.
I've watched people squash beef offline, like just meet each other in person. And again, I won't actually. No, I can say this one because it was a wholesome one. Like Cease and Vis had like a little bit of a beef, and I watched them at an MKNJ shake hands and let it go. You know?
Exactly.
That's the type of stuff I'm a fan of, and I want people to get to experience that. So just if they're dealing with that, as long as they can understand that it's noise and they can try to find us, that'd be my dream.
Yeah, that's really cool, and I'm on a very similar boat, and something we tried to do with Shrario TV. Something that is interesting to realize, like in any given tournament, a double elimination tournament, 50% of the people that enter that bracket are going to go 0-2 or 1-2 in the tournament.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people in the competitive scene, if they were to go 0-2 or 1-2, that would be bad. They would be like, I had a really bad tournament, I played like shit, blah blah blah. So to create an environment that welcomes those people who are willing to show up and go to 1-2 for a while until they actually got better and arbor that. And an example that I had would be we did an MKX tournament like last year, and I've never really played MKX. MK11 was my first MK that I got into like.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I skipped that one basically.
Yeah. so I played it, like I had the day off from work, so I played it for like 3 hours, just like lab combos and stuff like that, and then I entered the tournament. And the first person I played, I don't know if I'll say their name, I don't care. It was Unbearable Skill. Obviously one of the best MKX players, because he was like one of the loyalty to it, and he was obviously so much better than me. I knew I was going to get destroyed. But when I was playing him, he realized that there was a move that I didn't know how to deal with, and he literally just spammed it for all 3 of the games. And I understand you should do what you have to do to win, but I was very obviously getting trolled on. And I'm someone who's been in the scene. I'm not going to take it to heart. I didn't really care. I was laughing about it. I was like, I don't know how to deal with this. But I was just also thinking, like, if I was someone who was like, oh, MKX tournament, this is cool. I've never competed before. Let me go enter. And then you get paired up against someone who's obviously a big name in the community, and they just kind of destroy you and make you look silly on the stream. It could be discouraging. You know what I mean? It could be like, okay, I'm not going to, why would I, I tried, I failed. Let me just, maybe I'll play ranked, whatever. And, I'll stick away. And especially for a game like MKX, which still had a following, still had a lot of people who played it, to be in a situation where it wasn't incredibly welcoming. I realized that could be a little discouraging, and it kind of stinks that there are potentially other situations where that happens to people, where they're like, oh, I'm going to enter my first tournament, and then maybe they get teabagged, or maybe it's just they're in the Discord call or the Discord chat and they ask a question and people are like, oh, you don't know that or something like that. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. Because I feel like that kind of ties into the being more welcoming. I don't know if that was your exact point, but not that people need to be, obviously people have their, their beefs and people want to be the best. And, it's like, I think there's a bit of like, oh, you got to be more hard nosed. You got to have thicker skin, which I agree. And like, that's not something that would potentially discourage me. But it's just, we're not big enough to be shooing people away. You know what I mean? We're not big enough to be like, hey, we have access. Let's, like we'll be so essentially toxic to people that they won't want to come back. And not to say that's what happened in that situation, but like that does happen to people. Where you see almost like every day almost on Twitter where someone's like, yeah, I'm done playing. Sometimes it's personal, or sometimes it's like, yeah, like I saw a friend posted like when they were getting into Street Fighter, they're more than an MK player, and like, yeah, I get trolled on stream, never entering another tournament. And I don't think they ever did. I don't think they even streamed it again. Yeah. So it just stinks when stuff like that happens, and to not be like a welcoming environment, because even if you were someone who's like that, to not see the bigger picture and be like, okay, we're not big enough to be shooting people away. Is definitely something that I definitely agree with. Is there anything that you like want to shout out? I know you have your tournament series. Is this going to be every week on Friday?
It's coming back to weekly. Yeah, it was. I had to get through Outworld, and I thought I was going to manage both, and then you can imagine when I tried to. It was a lot more tiring than I.
Yeah, 5 days.
We always tend to overestimate ourselves.
Yeah, always.
But they'll be back weekly on Fridays. Just if I seem cool, I'm at KevinMcolon on everywhere. I'm sure the link will be somewhere.
Yeah, I'll put it in the description. Anything that you want to shout out. If you want to like give yourself a shout out now and then. Like Twitter or
I'm
Twitch
Kevin McClone everywhere. If I seem cool, stop by the stream and say hi. I'd love to chat with you guys. I'd love to play with you guys. If you're ever nervous that you're not good enough to get a viewer set, that's not the point of them. I have no problem trying to speed run you through. The more people we have that are better at the game, the better content we get out of the game. So if you're worried you're not good, I have guides. I have all of that stuff. But I'm also willing to play you with as much free time as I have if you're willing to show up. I just, again, want to remind people how fun the process of solving these games are, right? Because that's the mental dopamine hit we get. Like you get stuck in this you're like, I figured this out. I'm not that I'm not losing to this ever again feeling, and then you don't lose to it again is such a rush. And I just want to give more people that drug. That's it. So.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I'll definitely make sure to leave a link to all your social stuff in the description. So if anyone wants to give you a follow, But yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for coming on with your very, very obviously busy schedule, of course. And yeah, I don't know if you got any parting words, or we can kind of just end it here.
I'm all good. Keep playing Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, keep playing Mortal Kombat. You out there, and I will, and you should too. All right, peace out.